On the G9 we can save our custom settings to C1 up to C3 and then C3-1 and so on the dial here. How do you set them up? And what if there's a way you can save even more custom modes? Let's talk about it. One of the reasons I like Lumix cameras so much is the degree of customizability they offer. It is so convenient to be able to quickly turn things on and off with the custom function buttons and switch between different presets with the top dial. I'll go over how I have my G9 set up for mostly video and why, and walk you through the process of setting it up so you can set it up the way you want to. I'm also going to show you how you can have an infinite amount of custom presets. More about that later in the video. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian and welcome to my channel. I've put chapter markers in the video so you can skip to the parts you're interested in. Let's first talk about the custom function buttons. Programming the custom buttons is really easy, at least for the physical custom buttons. You could go all the way into the menu and set it there, but you can also long press a custom button that you want to program and it'll show you the list of possible functions. Pick one, hit OK and it's done. But how do you choose your setup? Let's go over my setup. The basis of my custom presets are the custom function buttons, the FN buttons. There are 7 on the back of the G9, or technically 8 if you count the AF/AE lock button, and 3 on the front. I mostly want the FM buttons to do the same thing across all custom presets, with a few exceptions here and there. So going from left to right on the back of the camera, FN3 I always have set to the default function, which is switching between electronic viewfinder and LCD screen, or let the camera decide with the eye sensor. Then to the right of the viewfinder we have the AF/AE lock button, which I have set up as back button focus. Because the shutter button on the G9 is so sensitive, I prefer doing it with my thumb. FN1 I have also left on the default setting and opens up the autofocus modes, or when I'm in manual focus it opens up the screen to move the focus area around. Next is the back dial or control dial. The back dial has multiple functions. It can rotate, but you can also press up, down, left or right, and you can customize all of it. I have set rotating the dial to change the size of the focus area box. This only works in the custom multi and the one area modes, but since I generally shoot in the one area mode, I want to be able to resize the box quickly. Pushing up on the dial enables or disables focus peaking when in manual focus, and toggles between peaking high and peaking low. Pushing down toggles between zebras 1, 2 or zebras off. Pushing left brings up the waveform, which I use a lot, and pushing right is set to open up the metering modes. FN2 is set to default, which is opening the quick menu. A quick look at the top of the camera then, before we go to the front. I have both the dedicated record button and the shutter button set to start recording, and half pressing the shutter does nothing, hence the back button focus. I have the front dial set to shutter speed and the rear dial to aperture. Since I rarely change the shutter speed, but I want to be able to quickly change aperture with my thumb. Over to the front, there are 3 more buttons. On your left there are 2. The top one is set to near shift and the bottom one to far shift. On your right there's a switch. I have this set to front rear control dial locked, so when I switch it on I can't change aperture, shutter speed or ISO. The options for this switch are a bit limited though, and I wish it would have the same options as the rest of the custom function buttons. Apart from the physical function buttons, there are some digital ones. On the screen there is this sidebar menu. If you open that, it reveals more custom function buttons. Here I've got Wi-Fi, IS lock, X teleconverter, audio level set and E stabilization. I recommend mapping your least used functions to this list. Now let's get into the custom modes. First of all, we have 5 sets of settings we can save: C1, C2 and C3 as visible on the dial. But when you go to C3, we can see here on the screen that it says C3-1. If we tap that, it shows 2 more options, C3-2 and C3-3. These are 2 more slots we can save settings to. The way to program the custom modes is to pick whatever mode you want to start from. So that could be aperture priority, program mode or creative video mode. Then set everything up how you want it to be for that particular custom mode. So things like color profile, codec, but also your custom function buttons. Then go into the menu, the spanner or wrench icon, and then the second on the list, custom set memory. Here you can pick the one you want to save it to, hit OK and it'll ask you to overwrite what's currently saved. Hit yes and it's done. The basis for my custom modes is creative video mode with everything on manual. But what I find the custom modes most useful for, at least for video, are different frame rates, since the G9 doesn't have shutter angle, which means that the shutter speed has to be set for a particular frame rate. That's the main setting that changes in my different custom modes, whilst most of the rest stays the same. For example, I have one area autofocus set up in all my custom modes. I like that as my starting point, since that is the autofocus mode I use the most. Let's take a look at my C1. So I've got this one set up for 25 frames per second in 4K 10-bit 4:2 and a shutter speed of 1/50th. What else have I set in this one? Well, as we can see here, the picture profile is V-Log-L and the V-Log View Assist is on. By the way, if you would like to learn more about V-Log-L, I recommend watching my 3-part series about V-Log-L. If we now go to C2, the basis is the same, but now for 50 frames per second. There's one big difference though, and that is the color profile. As you can see, it is set to natural in 8-bit, and I'll tell you why. The G9 can shoot in 10-bit up to 30 frames per second internally. In 50 or 60 frames per second, it drops down to 8-bit. If you've watched my Vlog series, you know that shooting in Vlog requires 10-bit. It does not work well in 8-bit. However, there's a way around that, and I'll explain that in the last section of this video. Moving on to C3 or C3-1, the only things that have changed are the frame rate and shutter speed. All the rest is the same as in C2. C3-2 is set up in MP4 Full HD 150 frames per second variable frame rate for slow motion. Also in the natural profile and manual focus, since there is no autofocus available in the variable frame rate mode. Lastly, there is C3-3, which is my photo mode, which honestly I don't use very often, but I wanted to have at least one custom photo mode so that my custom buttons are set how I want. So my C1, C2 and C3 have a lot in common, except for frame rate, shutter speed and sometimes the color profile. But let's talk about that a little bit more. In part 2 of my Vlog series, I've shown how to shoot Vlog in 50 and 60 frames per second in 10-bit 4:2 with the help of an external recorder, such as the Atomos Ninja V. I've actually got my G9's custom modes set up for this. But wait, I can hear you thinking, didn't he just show that 50 and 60 frames per second were set to natural profile and in 8-bit? And yes, you're right, but only in my set of custom modes that I've named handheld. Here's a feature of most higher-end Lumix cameras that I think a lot of people don't use or know about. It's the Save Restore Camera Setting option. This is where we can save all of our camera settings to an SD card or to the Lumix Sync app. The first reason why you would want to do this is of course in a case where you have to do a factory reset of the camera. It would be really frustrating to have to set everything up from scratch again. But instead, you can put in your SD card, go to Save Restore Camera Setting, tap on Load, and it will load all your settings back onto your G9. The neat thing about this is that you can save multiple sets of settings. In my case, I have 4 sets of settings saved for different situations. I have handheld for handheld shooting. I have Ninja V for when I have the Atomos Ninja V connected and I want to shoot higher frame rates in vlog. Studio for these situations. And vlog photo for vlogging style shooting and photography. So the answer to the question as to how I have my G9's custom mode set up for vlog in higher frame rates, I simply go to Save Restore Camera Setting, pick Ninja V, and if we look at my C2 now, instead of the 8-bit natural profile we saw earlier, it says Vlog L in 50 frames per second in 10-bit 422. Because I've also set HDMI rec output to 10-bit 422. Let me show you how to save multiple sets of settings. You set the camera up with the custom modes that you want for this particular set of settings, then go into the menu to the spanner or wrench icon, scroll down until you see Save Restore Camera Settings. Press OK and press Save. Press New File and change the file name to whatever you want, as long as it has no more than 8 characters. Hit Set and it has saved a .dat file to your SD card. To be safe, I also copy these files to my computer and to a cloud drive. Once you've saved different sets of settings and named them, you can load whichever one you need. So in theory, this could give you an infinite amount of custom modes. Let me know what you think about these custom modes and sets of settings you can save. Did it give you more ideas about how to set your camera up? Or how have you set up your custom modes? Let me know in the comments. I hope this video was helpful. If so, please like and subscribe, and maybe hit that notification bell, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.